This is Get Real with Bob and Stacy, the show that helps you learn about the mortgage and real estate markets. Get the inside scoop from their expert list of guests and have some fun along the way. Now, here's Bob Gallagher and Stacy Alcorn.
Welcome back. You're listening to Get Real with Bob and Stacy here on the Money Matters Radio Network. You're tuning into our Leaders and Legends segment. For today's guest, we have Mike Schultz, president of the Rain Group. Mike Schultz is a world-renowned consultant and sales expert. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Oh, thanks for having me here, guys.
By the way, he's way more than what you just said, even though it's awesome that he's running Rain Group. He's also Wall Street Journal bestselling author of Rainmaking Conversations, How to Influence, Persuade, and Sell in Any Situation, and his newest book, Insight Selling, Surprising Research on What Sales Winners Do Differently. So, Mike, tell us first of all about Rain Group and what your company does.
Sure. We were started in 2002. In 2008, we were on Inc. Magazine's list of the fastest growing companies in the country. Our focus is sales training and consulting. So essentially, we teach people how to sell. The company itself has headquarters here in the Boston area, and we also have offices in Sydney, Johannesburg, Mumbai, London, Geneva, Toronto.
Wow.
All over the world.
All over the world.
I am curious about your new book, Insight Selling. What is insight selling?
Well, it's pretty interesting that selling as a field has been kind of boring and stable for 40 years. You could have read a sales book in 1982, fallen asleep, and woken up 30 years later and been just fine. But in the last 10 years or so, selling has changed more than it had in the last 100. With the internet changing how much information that buyers have. I mean, there was a time just 10, 15 years ago where if you wanted information from a seller, you had to call them. It might not be on their website. You'd have to ask for a brochure. And the seller, you'd have to go to a conference. People used to leave conferences with these big bags of information because that was the one time of year they could see who all the vendors were. The vendors had all the information. Now they don't. So the question is since the core construct of what sellers had to do is literally gone and wildly changed over the last 10 years, what is it that sellers who are succeeding, what are the sellers who are really reaching the pinnacle of sales, what are they doing differently than the sellers who might be following the playbook from 10 or 15 years ago that just aren't having the same success? So we researched that. We actually studied purchases because we wanted to find out from buyers who did they actually select and why did they select one seller over another. So we studied 731 business-to-business purchases from buyers that represented $3.1 billion of purchasing power. And we asked them to compare the seller that you bought from to the seller that came in the closest second but didn't get the sale.
Wow.
So in that sliver of difference is what sales winners do differently. And that became the research and then the book Insight Selling.
Wow, that is awesome.
I want to read the book right now.
Yes. So can you give us one item that those high producers or performers do differently?
Yeah. So one of the things that was surprising to us, and this is the number 2 difference out of 42 factors we studied, was the buyers said that the sellers that they gave their business to was more likely to collaborate with them. Was it about trust? No, it wasn't. The difference wasn't trust. Was it about understanding need, crafting a compelling solution? Was it about gravitas and knowledge? Was it about all these kinds of things? No, it was just about they were willing to work with me. And it's kind of funny because there's the most popular selling book of the last, say, 5 years is this book called The Challenger Sale. And let me ask you guys, the word collaborate and the word challenge, in the connotation, would you say that those are more synonym or more antonym?
Antonyms.
Antonyms, yeah.
And so we found the exact opposite. So it's always kind of interesting when you find the opposite of the trend to be true. And we were doing this based on what did you actually spend your money on? So they voted with their dollars. It wasn't just a survey. And it was pretty different. So the sellers that were more willing to collaborate with them, and actually it wasn't even the sellers that had a product or service advantage because the buyers didn't perceive from seller to seller that there was much difference in what they were buying. So if it wasn't about the product or service, they still based their decision criteria on something. And it was just really interesting that we found most of the differences were based on how the seller interacted with them.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It really comes down to the salesperson.
it does come down to the salesperson. If the buyer perceived there to be a product or service advantage, then that was helpful.
Right.
That was one of the factors. But just even thinking about the real estate business that you guys are in, one real estate agent to another, they don't necessarily have a product advantage.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
One mortgage broker to another, they don't have a product advantage.
You're right.
They have the way they interact with buyers.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that the sellers, because before they're actually the mortgage brokers, they are just selling, they are being judged on how they interact with people. And that's where the slivers of difference came in. It was all about the seller behavior.
Do you think that anyone can become a top performer in sales?
It depends on what kind of sales. So if you're doing a transactional sale and you have the energy to stand at the bazaar and hawk your $20 thing, then you can kind of stand up and do that. If you're going door to door to try to pitch something and go, yeah, sure, if you have the energy, passion, and commitment. But a lot of the people that we deal with are working in some kind of complex sale. Is real estate simple? It certainly isn't simple. That's why there's actually the whole industry, because people, you can't do it yourselfer on that. We work with companies that sell multi-million-dollar technology systems to businesses. You can have all the energy, passion, enthusiasm that you want and wake up and plug every day and work on the numbers game, but if you're dumb as a stump, it's not going anywhere. So there are a whole bunch of factors that play into whether or not you can succeed. How likable you are. Does it make a difference?
Yes.
Is it really make friends and influence people? Does it all go back to Dale Carnegie? Well, we actually found that one of the greatest differences, it was in the top 10, was that the buyer actually liked the seller.
Yes.
But did that give them the win? No, it didn't. But if they didn't like the seller, they weren't in the last two. So likability is a factor. But if you're just, that really pleasant friend and especially in, just thinking about the real estate industries, there's a lot of let's go out for pizza and let me get you some tickets and all that. That's helpful and all that, but it doesn't make for success. It's more table stakes.
That's interesting because I think you said there's 42 different things that you studied, because sometimes in real estate, I see it's an anomaly, but you'll see somebody that is a top producing salesperson and they are not a likable person. And you're like, how the heck does this person
We see that in
win
all sorts
business?
of sales.
Yeah. But it's because there's so many factors that go into sales.
Yeah, you can't believe how many successful radio hosts aren't likable either. It's wild, but it happens.
I see that every week.
So
Thanks. Oh, that's two for you today already.
But it's not necessarily about the harmony liking that I want to hang out with this person on the weekend.
Right.
A lot of times if you're interviewing someone because you want to buy something, whether you're an individual, whether you're buying for a corporation, you're looking for their ability to help you make good decisions. So sometimes the person that is willing to push back to say, well, why are you thinking of doing that? I'm not sure I would necessarily do it like that. Those are the kinds of people, even if they're not necessarily warm and fuzzy, that someone said, I met 3 guys and they weren't worth the time. This particular one knows what they're talking about. I don't have to be their best friend.
Right.
But I am looking for, and this is interesting, so likability does not equate to a relationship. You can have someone you don't necessarily like, but have a great business relationship with them. That person that you say, every time I have a meeting with them, it's, like I had a rib taken out.
Yes.
But when I have that meeting, I always feel better for it in terms of how I'm going to go about my own strategies in my own day.
Yes.
But that's a valuable relationship, even if you don't like the person.
Wow.
Let's talk about sales organizations. So you've studied all kinds of top sales organizations. Those that have higher revenue and margin growth, achieve higher pricing, etc. What do they do differently or higher than average from other companies that you could say, like a company like mine, these are the things you could do to develop better salespeople?
Sure. And you're actually referring to a study that we just released. And it's called the Top Performing Sales Organization. So we studied 472 companies, and we looked at all of their various sales practices for how they lead selling. And we looked at things like strategy. How do we actually go to market? What is our pricing strategy? We looked at things like structure. How do we pay our salespeople? Do we have a channel? Do we pay direct? Where do they work? How do they work? Inside sales, outside sales? What's the structure? We looked at operations in terms of databases and technology and compensation. We looked at a whole bunch of factors around sales enablement, talent, And we wanted to find out, just like that sales winner study, what were the slivers of difference that the better organizations did most differently. And it's pretty wild. And I'll share with you a couple of things. One, of 72 factors that we studied there, the biggest difference between the sales organizations that had higher win rates and better revenue and profit growth and better pricing was their ability to build more business with their existing accounts. But the interesting thing about that was the least difference between the organizations that got these better business results and the ones that didn't, that we called the rest. There was the top performers and the rest. The least difference was their answer to the question that there was great growth potential in their existing offering set. So they still had the same stuff in the bag, and yet the better sales organizations were able to drive more sales with that existing bag. And I just thought that was kind of fascinating. The last thing I would say here, just because this is one of the themes of one of the big differences, I believe it was something like 17% of people in the organizations that were the rest had the skills to drive sales with existing accounts, had strategic account management skills. So it was, as a skill area, it was horrible. So if you're thinking about, I'll round out some of the big things. Consultative selling skills. You might think, okay, this is something that is, not new. Well, if you want to lose weight, eat less and exercise more.
Right.
If you want to do a better job selling, make sure that your sellers can actually provide value. Understand need. Listen. Understand the business context of their buyers or the personal context that's important. Position your solutions and pick the right things that are going to work for them. Show the impact for them of buying in general, because sometimes people don't buy because they say, hey, it's not worth it. And sometimes it's, it is worth it, so I'm going to buy. The question is, from whom do I buy?
Right.
So what is the impact and the difference of buying from you versus buying from the other available options? Just the ability to have these kinds of skills was a big difference.
Wow.
Another thing was the quality of sales management. The sellers that had goals, the sellers that had action plans, the sellers that had sales managers that they said were spent time coaching them and motivating them versus just checking out their pipeline saying, is it going to close? Is it going to close? Is it going to close?
Yes.
Those sales managers, well, that wasn't very motivating. So if you had strong sales managers and strong sales management system and skills that systematically across teams, and this is for large organizations, of course, systematically across teams got good results, then that was one of those, the tide that brought up all the boats. The last thing that I'll say just in terms of key points was the organization's focus on value. There are organizations, and one of the benefits, I think, of what I get to do is I get to walk the halls of some of the world's largest and most well-known organizations, as well as businesses of all types and sizes around the world. And there are two feels that you get. One feel is when the organization truly believes that they're making a difference for their buyers. From the leaders on down, it's not a story. We're actually making a difference. And then the organizations where they say, if I don't hit quota, I'm fired. It's all about quota. They don't care. Find them, sell it, move on, keep selling. Yeah, but they're not necessarily going to benefit from that. I don't care if they have the budget. Get the budget.
Right.
So if it's all about those kinds of things, motivation was way down, turnover was way up, and we even looked at unwanted turnover, meaning when you don't want sellers to leave, but they leave. The organizations that had that sort of cultural focus on value, that really believed it, a lot less people left. You know how hard it is to replace a producer.
Right.
It's awful.
It is.
You know how much it costs.
Right.
So when the organization has that kind of... So there's a few tactical, cultural, skill-based kinds of things that the best organizations do.
How long did these studies take? They sound monumental in scope.
Well, it all started when I was 5, and I read In Search of Excellence, and I just couldn't get enough of it. So they take about 6 months.
Wow.
A lot of conversations with leaders at organizations, a lot of conversations with sellers, survey, statistical analysis, regression, all that kind of stuff, and then making sense of it, making it so it's not, oh my God, I hope he doesn't talk about the statistics, making it so that it's relevant to people in their business decisions. It takes a while.
That's interesting. You've taken statistics and made them incredibly interesting.
Yes.
Oh, that's kind of you to say.
I'm going to do a quick recap for everybody listening so far. What we've learned so far, and by the way, this is Mike Schultz, president of Rain Group. He wrote 2 amazing books, Rainmaking Conversations, How to Influence, Persuade, and Sell in Any Situation, and Insight Selling, Surprising Research on What Sales Winners Do Differently. People can buy those at Amazon, by the way.
They sure can. And they can buy it in Russian, Portuguese, Turkish, Chinese.
Nice.
Couple
Awesome.
others.
I'll be buying it, but just in the one language that I speak,
Yeah.
Italian.
I've been sitting here taking notes the whole time. This is what some of the stuff we've learned so far. Selling has changed because of the internet. No longer do customers have to call us. They can go online and get all the info they need. The number 2 difference in high producers is those salespeople are more likely to collaborate in the eyes of the buyer. Sometimes in sales, likability does not necessarily equate to a sale, although it helps. But sometimes the buyer's just looking for a person who can help them make a good decision. Top performing sales organizations, the ones that have higher wins, higher profit, they are the ones that build more business with existing accounts. So they drive more sales with the existing stuff they already have. And those sales organizations they have sales teams that understand the value that they have. Not only do they understand the value, but they truly believe that they make a difference. Did I get most of it?
That's pretty good. Do you want to know the number 1 difference between sales winners and the sellers that
Yes.
come in second place?
Yes.
That they educate buyers with new ideas and perspectives.
Ooh.
I like that.
When and when we talked to buyers about this, when they said they actually taught me something I didn't know, and it helped me make a better decision, then the value of having that person around and that the desire to have them around continuously, I mean, not all the time, but for their business decisions was very high. So if I could buy the engineering services for my company from this one or that one, and the services will get done. If I can buy my corporate tax and audit from this accounting firm or that accounting firm and the work will get done, okay, so that's, a toss-up. But these people actually help me think.
Right.
And that's what I'm going to buy from.
Wow.
Makes a big difference.
Where can people find you? What's your website?
So the website is raingroup.com. Pretty easy to find. Rain like the weather, group like singing group.
Okay.
That's the easiest
Excellent.
way to find me.
Great. That was Mike Schultz, president of the Rain Group. Thanks for joining us on the show today, Mike.
All right. Thanks for having me here, guys.
Stay tuned. We got to take a quick commercial break. We'll be back with more Get Real with Bob and Stacy after this.